In the year 2000, she fed a hungry, homeless boy. She never knew that 24 years later, 50 Hells Angels would knock on her door and change her life forever. In the winter of 2000, the streets of a small American town were quiet and unforgiving. Snow clung to the sidewalks, and most people hurried past anyone who didn't belong indoors. That's when Margaret saw him. He couldn't have been more than 12. Thin jacket, torn shoes. He stood outside her diner every afternoon, pretending not to be hungry, pretending not to exist. Most days, people avoided eye contact. Margaret didn't. One evening, just before closing, she stepped outside and gently asked, "Have you eaten today?" The boy shook his head. She didn't ask questions. She didn't call the police. She didn't lecture him. She simply brought him inside, sat him at the counter, and placed a warm plate of food in front of him. "Eat slow," she said, "or safe here." That night turned into many nights. Margaret fed the boy whenever he came by. Sometimes she packed extra food by mistake. Sometimes she slipped him a few dollars. When winter grew harsh, she gave him an old coat that once belonged to her late husband. She never learned his last name. He never forgot her kindness. Life moved on. The diner closed years later. Margaret grew older, quieter. Her world became smaller, just her modest home and memories of a life spent serving others. She often wondered what happened to that boy. She hoped he survived. Then, one quiet morning in 2024, everything changed. Margaret heard a low rumble outside her house. At first, she thought it was thunder. But the sound grew louder. Engines, dozens of them. She peered through the window and froze. Motorcycles lined the street. Leather jackets, chrome. Patches that made her heart race. A tall man stood at the front, silver in his beard, eyes steady but kind. Behind him were nearly 50 bikers, silent and respectful. "Ma'am," the man said, removing his helmet. "You probably don't recognize me." Margaret shook her head. "I was the boy you fed, outside the diner." 24 years ago, her hands trembled. He continued, voice thick with emotion, "You saved my life. When no one else saw me, you did. That meal, that coat, that kindness, it kept me alive long enough to find a family. A real one." He stepped aside. The bikers bowed their heads. "I were here to say thank you," he said, "and to make sure you're never alone again." They repaired her home that day, paid her medical bills, made sure she was cared for. But more than that, they gave her something priceless. Proof that kindness never disappears. As they rode away, Margaret stood at her door with tears in her eyes. She had fed a hungry child once, and that small act had echoed for a lifetime.